The Water Entrepreneur is brought to you by ASTERRA, a leader in remote Earth observation technologies, and Imagine H2O, building solutions with the world's best water companies. Support is also provided by Aquarius Spectrum, Simple Lab, Fluid Analytics, Civil Grid, and Orb Monitor. And now, live from beautiful downtown Encinitas, your host, Paul Gagliardo. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. This is episode 50 of the Water Entrepreneur Podcast, and I'm your host, Paul Gagliardo. And today, I'm very excited to have as my guest, Elly Perets, CEO of ASTERRA, the leader in remote Earth observation applied technology. Hi, Elly. Thanks for being a water entrepreneur and appearing on the show today.
Thank you for having me on your wonderful podcast. I'm a big fan, just to let you know.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And first of all, I want to thank you and ASTERRA for being core sponsors of the podcast. We've reached a 1-year milestone of posting episodes, and to celebrate this anniversary, you're the big 5-0.
Congratulations to that.
Yeah, this is great. It's been a very interesting ride for me, talking to lots of different people, and I've learned lots of things. So it's really great. I do have to admit, I never listen to them though. After I record them, I just don't listen to them anymore. So
yeah. I know the feeling. It's quite embarrassing to see yourself and listening to yourself. It's like, who is this person?
Exactly. I understand. You've held positions in marketing and software before becoming CEO of ASTERRA. You weren't the founder. I'm assuming that you were hired to run the company by the investing partners. I'm curious, when a CEO is hired to run a startup, is it difficult to organize the roles and responsibilities between you and the technology founder?
Well, I'll use my experience. This is the third startup that I'm joining. Some I joined as a founder. Some I joined as a hired in a hired position. And I've seen all kinds of outputs. In general, too many technology companies are in too many times of the cases, technology companies are not successful because of the founders, because founders do not find the right place to bring their value and understand where are the places that they need to bring other people to do it. Unfortunately, I've been involved at least in one case where a successful company with a successful technology was shut down because of mistakes of the founders, because they didn't know where they are. So it really depends. Luckily, in ASTERRA case, the founder, Loren, knows exactly what are his strengths, what are his weaknesses. In fact, he was involved with bringing me in on board for the purpose of developing the business, of taking a product to the market, knowing that being able to understand the technology or build the technology is far from making a company successful. And since the beginning, we are working in a complete harmony. I'm totally relying on him on the basis of his expertise. And I'm totally relying on him on the places of his character, which is still innovative, breaking the rules, not taking no as an answer. And more than anything else, imagining, always imagining. And maybe I'm a bit hallucinating, but I'm a true believer that the imagination of the humankind is the way to move forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always, when I talk to startups and people with ideas, I look at three different levels. An idea, which is just, kind of a pipe dream, an invention, a widget. But then the most important part of which is what you were talking about, was taking that invention and actually making an innovation out of it that's a marketable product that somebody wants to buy. And that's the hard thing for the technology founder to usually accomplish, is to get to that last step.
Yeah, we are unfortunately we are human, and human are destined to be biased. And the bias of an entrepreneur, or the bias of a typical founder, is being in love with the technology.
Yeah.
Now, overcoming that bias, trying to look on the customer and understanding that if you don't solve a real problem that is really painful and worth something to the customer, will take a startup company nowhere. So that's the first bridge that needs to be built when we are going into the technology sector. Understanding the power of the technology is important, but understanding what is this problem that we are going to solve and quantifying that problem is the second step. It's not easy. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's never easy.
Never easy. Did you find it a challenge to enter a business area, in this case, water and satellites, that you were not familiar with? Was that, kind of difficult? Was it just something you needed to learn? How did you find that, entering that marketplace?
Yeah. Well, I'll try to answer that without sounding too arrogant. The answer is no. I didn't find it challenging because based on my experience, I found a lot of similarities to any other things that I've done in the past. And because a man like me is a accumulation of his failures, I have a lot of experience. So I've taken all of this experience and bridged the gaps. In general, the method of applying technology to a market is more or less the same. We spoke about it earlier. Understand the technology, the power of the technology, and then ask what is the issue that we are trying to solve, or to what extent this issue is relevant. And then we can talk about the third step, which we didn't speak about yet. The third step is understanding that, or asking the following question: if the problem is real, the customer or the market is not waiting for me to come and solve it, correct? Because the problem is real. So they have to do something with it today. So going and investigating what are the ways that the customer is solving the problem that I think that I want to solve for them. What are the tools, methods, technologies, practices, is just a standard step in the process. And it doesn't take much in our case. It didn't take much in our case to understand the acoustic model and the sensors, the acoustic sensors model as well. The tough part was to collect the data, Paul, which was quite amazing in the water business. In fact, what shocked me in the water business is that there is no data. So if I'm taking my previous experience, you get into a new market, you buy research, you look for data, you either make a research. It doesn't matter, but the data is there. It's just a question of how much you are ready to invest in getting this data. In the water sector, at least in the area of non-revenue water, it was shocking. Back in 2016 and 2017, finding that there is no data. I met several acoustic companies, regardless if they are producer of the acoustic equipment or using the acoustic thing, and they couldn't answer a simple question like, how many leaks exist on a typical water utility per mile? How many leaks your team can find a day? How many leaks? What is the average size of a leak? All this data doesn't exist. We had to go and find this data. We had to build the database for ourselves. Now it's obvious. Now everybody is using exactly the same terminology because we have created the benchmark model, which is let's look on the alternative of the technologies and then compare them. That's the fourth step, okay? The fourth step in adaptive technology is, okay, if there are other ways of solving the problem, the question is not how the technology is, how we bring, in other words, bringing a new technology to solve the problem is the lowest question that the customer would ask. They would ask, given the way I'm solving the problem today, to what extent the new way you are offering, Mr. Technology guy, offering me to solve the problem, to what extent it's better? And better can be by more efficient, less expensive, faster, something that can be quantified. So that would be the fourth step. So going back into your question, is it difficult to go into an unknown field? Using a standard methodology, being open and understand that we don't know enough and we need to learn, and doing it with the methodology that just explained. Question number 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 2 more. We'll speak about it probably later. Would help. Luckily, the area of remote sensing, geophysics, and Earth observation was easier for me. Instead, it was easier to learn the satellite sector than the plumbing or water sector. I mean, because I'm a technology geek, I have background in engineering, I have background in software, and explaining to me wavelengths and interaction with the ground and interferences was no-brainer. But going through the process of understanding the process of maintaining a water utility was hard. It's really, really low tech.
It's low tech, and also for many, many years, it still is, it's in the mind of the operator. It's not articulated, it's not written down, it's not documented very much. But if you find the one person who's lived it for 40 years, you know, it's all anecdotal, but you get a pretty good idea of what's going on. But it's all in people's minds. And that has always been a problem with the water business. Hopefully it's changing now to some degree, but I still see it in other areas that I get involved in. As you said, you look in the literature and there's nothing. It's like, well, why isn't anybody publishing on this? And you know, there's a lot of reasons for that we can go into, which I don't want to at this point in time. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right about the lack of documented information, you know, in the water space. Let me ask you a follow-up question. When you first took this job, did you intuitively believe that it would be a success? Or, you know, did you think that it had potential? And with hard work and the right breaks, it would be successful. What, you know, kind of, what was your initial feeling about, you know, just the business model and the technology?
Yeah, I'll give you an anecdote. The person that introduced you to the technology, one of the initial investors with the technology, when he told me about it, my first reaction was, I don't believe it's possible. But if it is possible, I must get involved. So, and I do remember it was in a little pub in New York back in 2015, and we had this conversation before the drinks came. So there were no external influence on that reaction. I'm a salesman in my DNA. A good salesman is used to failures, is used to get no. In fact, we get no more than we get yes. In fact, our life is to overcome the fact that yesterday a customer told us it's not going to work, or I don't need it, or I don't think it's going to work for me. and we wake up in the morning and we promise ourselves to make the best deal ever today. Hopeless optimism. So I didn't ask myself at that time if it's going to be a success or not. Statistically, if you look on the numbers, the rate of success for a new technology to get to the point that it penetrates the market, let alone generating revenue, let alone growing, is less than 3%. In fact, there are more chances that it will not happen. And any logical person that when he steps into, we have to admit, or we have to acknowledge the statistics. The numbers never lie. So yeah, that's my answer. I mean, my logical assumption was that it's going to fail, but I couldn't resist getting it.
I hear that. I've been involved in many projects that I knew had, less than that 3% chance of success, but I'm like, no, I need to be involved in this. It's just too good. It's just too much fun. So as from a management perspective, what do you think are the most important issues, kind of facing a CEO or management professional today? Is it fundraising, planning, execution, strategic growth, employee development? I mean, where do you see kind of the most important pieces of the puzzle that are incorporated into the role of a CEO?
Yeah. So if you allow me, I'll actually provide 2 points here, two answers, not one. One which is probably generic for any CEO around the world, specifically in those times, and the other one which is really, really specific for Utilis, ASTERRA, for us. So I think that the main challenge right now is talent, maintaining talent, acquiring talent, finding those talents. That's a huge challenge. In the US and outside of the US, maybe we'll speak about it later, but ASTERRA is a really global company. It's not focusing only on the US market. And it goes into several places. To be successful in today's market, people need to be multidisciplinaries. Knowing one area only, especially in today's technology, it doesn't work. ASTERRA bring the knowledge of remote sensing, radar engineering, full stack engineering or software engineering, data engineering, all together into one place. How one that is specialized in one area and is not open for the rest could be successful in such a environment. And I'm not the only, ASTERRA is not the only company that combine multiple disciplines. That's on one. And on the other hand, there is a very interesting and challenging generation gaps in the way people from my generation understand or think of what is a workplace, what is the commitment, the mutual commitment between a workplace and the employee, and the way young people today think about it. We can like it, we can dislike it, it doesn't matter. It's a challenge. It's something that we need to handle.
Yep.
I would say, though, that the overall, if I may rate what is coming out from colleges, schools, early stages, workplaces, maybe people with one job experience or 3 job experience, 3 to 10 years of experience, is highly talented, deep knowledge, curiosity is everywhere. So I'm very happy with the type of people that we managed to bring on board. The other challenge that we have, which is probably more specific, is the fact that ASTERRA doesn't fall into any template of a tech company, a typical tech company. And the place where we see the most challenging is the raising funds area. We don't bring much value to a portfolio of a company of a VC that wants to maintain a standard portfolio, because we fit nowhere. Are we a water company? Are we an earth observation company? Are we a data company? Are we a radar company? Is it a software company? What are we? Is it cyber? Is it fintech? We are not cyber. We are not fintech. We are not all those buzzwords that VC needs to have on their. And I found it very, very challenging. I found it challenging because there are always people that got curious about what we are doing, and they were extremely engaged with what we are doing. But at the end, when it comes to the decision, it's too much risk. We don't fit. So yes, we do have at least 2 institutional VCs on our cap table now, but it wasn't easy for us.
No, it's interesting. I know sometimes it's when a new startup fits very neatly into a little category. Oh, we're an AI company. It's like, okay, throw money at it. Yeah. You know, we're an electric, vehicle company. Okay, throw money at it. Those kind of things are very understandable. Although you'd think the VCs would be a little more sophisticated, but we're not going to go into the mental capabilities of your typical venture capitalist. That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Although I haven't had any VCs on the show yet, so I'm working on that. So I'll have a chance to quiz them on various things pretty soon. I want to explore the evolution of the company from a number of different perspectives, and maybe we can start with kind of the expansion from an Israeli-based company to a worldwide endeavor. I'm curious as to, where did you begin the expansion, and why, and what were the challenges expanding the company really around the globe? I mean, you guys are a worldwide company now doing work on, I think, every continent, maybe not Antarctica, but you'll probably get there sooner or later.
Yeah, well, as soon as they will have pipelines or yeah,
lithium maybe.
In fact, there were few engagements about what we can do, mainly in terms of measuring the amount of ice in Antarctica. So that's a capability that we have. We just need to find a business model and the customer to pay for it. But yes, you are correct. We are from Japan all the way to the Pacific coast of the US and in between. And there are a few islands in between as well. So we are around the globe. To be honest, this is a kind of a DNA of an Israeli technology company. By definition, Israel is a lab. No one is expecting to generate any major revenues in Israel. Going outside of Israel would come with the challenge or the question, how are we going to conduct business? Is the go-to-market going to be through channels or direct? Completely different skill sets, different thinking, different processes, sales cycles, and so on. Usually it's a combination of both. We are in the business of doing business, so we don't stay with one model. Many models work, especially in the infrastructure market where there are all kinds of different entities, consulting engineering firms, suppliers of different equipment, suppliers of different solutions, customers that want to do it all, customers that have no capability and they need someone to help them to come in, all different sizes. Also the diversity of how the water or infrastructure in general is being set up in different countries. I'll just give the water example in the US compared to other places. So having over 50,000 water utilities in the US, is an opportunity on one hand. On the other hand, it's a very difficult sales and marketing challenge. If you take the UK, for example, 32 water utilities, each one of them, or some of them, are in the size of 20, 30 miles. Italy is the same. So obviously, it's completely different way of thinking when it comes to bringing a technology to different customers. A customer that is taking care of treating the water, both distribution and carrying the money from the water from one place to another place, and so on, compared to a small water utility, which is 20 miles of distribution. Those are different animals. It's all different when it comes back to the question of what is the problem, how do you solve the problem today, and so on. So the fact that we are bringing the same technology doesn't mean anything on the sales cycle. So yes, there are a lot of challenges expanding. Again, going to a market, run a market research, finding what works, what doesn't work, trying, failing, fixing, and do it all over again.
Yeah, really. Repeat, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So ASTERRA began life as Utilis, and you were a potable water leak detection company. And now I would say you're branded as a remote Earth observation company. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution?
Yeah. So obviously, the technology, as we said earlier, is a consideration, but it's not the important thing. So the market, what problem do we solve, is key. And the name Utilis and the brand Utilis was perfect from the point of view that we chose to solve the non-revenue water first before looking on other things. In general, in the market or in the area of Earth observation, if you allow me, I would now take a little turn on the overall situation on Earth. Solving Earth problems can only happen if we agree that we need large amount of data. Because of the biased nature of our mind, we don't really understand the magnitude of the issues that we are creating to Earth. And the fact that we see a river somewhere, or a leak somewhere else, or a pollution in other areas, or we see a construction issue, doesn't mean that we understand the magnitude of the problem worldwide. And the only way today to get a good sense of what is happening on Earth is using satellites and Earth observation, collecting huge amount of data and getting a good understanding of where to put the resources. So this is why Earth observation is so critical for the future of Earth, why we need to keep the space clean, why we need to understand our mission in that area. The challenge here is today not collecting the data. There are a lot of satellites. The challenge is translating this data into actionable data. Especially in our field, what is unique about what we are doing, we are creating a work order. Someone needs to go and do something. Our real customer are not the water utilities. Our real customer is someone that wakes up in the morning, gets into a truck and drives somewhere to do something in the ground. Okay, regardless if it is a road, highway, railroad, mining, water utility, and so on. So rebranding came once we got to the point that we understood that we can do so much more with our technology, and Utilis was no longer the right way to go or keep the or go with the brand. There is another aspect here which goes back with, I mean, you didn't want to speak about it, but at the end, that's how technology companies can grow, going back into the financial market. The financial market would support the technology only if they see X amount returns on their investment. And X amount always come with a time. So it's X amount usually at 5 years, maybe 7 years. That would be the typical lifespan of a venture capital round. And in the water sector, if the pilot is taking 5 years, it will never happen. I think, and I've said it publicly in a lot of places, if the water sector is really looking for innovation, they have to change. The piloting model, the idea that traditional market can continue to stay traditional and hope that the change will come somehow by throwing a $30,000 on a pilot with a small group in Tennessee would do anything good is not only wrong, it's damaging concept, because we are not being measured economically on how many pilots we have done, or even what is the revenue that we are generating. We are being measured on ARR, on service, on continuity. If the idea is not a full adoption, if you're asking me, I don't want to do it, because it looks bad on my balance sheet. If someone is doing a pilot and it disappears for 2 or 3 years, from the investment market point of view, it doesn't matter how much money I got, it's a churn. And churn is failure. So I could not afford continue to be in this trap in the water sector. I had to break it into other areas that understand or the way those verticals are working are more reasonable in terms of adapting technology.
Yeah, it's so the water market is very interesting. For me, coming from a municipal career, I view it as the norm. As somebody who started off in the private sector, would view the public sector as being totally ass backwards, or kind of just backwards. I come from the perspective of, okay, that's normal. The public sector, the private sector is really fast, compared to the public sector. And so I guess maybe I'm a little used to it, but it does take a long time in the mindset of folks. And I'm still working with a lot of startups and trying to get them to get utilities to try new things. And it's very interesting. You really have to find kind of the one person in the organization that's willing to kind of stick their neck out and not only try something, but make an investment. And not just, like you said, do a little pilot project someplace and then, okay, we'll pass it off to somebody else, and maybe it's good, maybe it's not, it doesn't really matter. But really looking at, what the value proposition is, of this new technology and how it can benefit the organization, going forward and sticking your neck out. That's, I think that's the biggest issue with any bureaucratic, public sector organization is, you're better off personally keeping your head down, not making waves. You stick your neck out, invariably you're going to get a cut, your neck cut, your head cut off. But anyway, I shouldn't wax so negatively philosophic, since this is the business I'm in. I do think we're changing. The more people I talk to, the more interest there is in trying to make things happen. And I think as we go back to this new crop of employees that we're looking at, I'm hoping that as the legacy folks move out and the new folks move in, that whole idea of data, of analysis, of trying new things, hopefully that will become the norm, as opposed to the exception.
I would challenge that by asking, can we wait until it happens?
No.
The situation is getting worse. It doesn't wait for us. I'm talking about infrastructure in general, the public sector in general, climate change in general. Can we afford waiting for a mentality change that take generations while the issues are crumbling and collapsing on us because someone is not ready to put his neck out there and take a risk? My answer, I mean, I've seen it all over. It's clear to me that we cannot afford that. I've seen also situations that organizations that were hesitating to take our technology on board in different verticals, they came like a snake by them once a disaster happened in their territory and asked for help. And it was very unfortunate to see. We don't want to be. I think it will be wrong to be to chase ambulances. I think people need to think a little bit more responsible for what they are doing.
I would agree with that. I think all of us just have to continue to fight the good fight, because without people like you and me pushing, I think it's, people are, it's the old story about the frog in the boiling water, right?
Absolutely.
You heat up the water slowly, the frog doesn't move. You throw him in boiling water, he jumps right out. We just are starting to throw boiling water on people.
Yeah.
So another question I had is, in the early years, you were I'll call it a product-oriented company, and now you're changing more to a service-oriented company. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution?
Yeah, it has two dimensions. There is a financial dimension and market dimension. The easiest way to penetrate into a market is leverage the existing models of purchasing and procurement. In other words, assuming, let's go back to the model. Okay, we spoke about the 4 questions. Question number 4, I'll just remind everybody, what is the power of the technology? Question number 2, what problem does it solve? What is the real problem that it solves? Question number 3, if the problem is real, what are the practices and technologies and other ways of solving the problem today? And then question number 4, it would be, to what extent the new technology is improving the way the problem is being solved today. So let's assume, for the sake of the discussion, that we overcome all the first 4 questions with a municipality, a water utility, a public sector organization. Now we are getting into the biggest challenge, in my opinion: how to drive a change. Because even if we convince the CEO, the CFO, the operation manager, the plumbers on the field, everybody that they have some type of a process that they need to change in order to adapt the new technology. Lower the gap or lower the bar of moving from 1 to 2, easier to adapt. For example, if I need now to bring into the servers farms new servers, install new software, train half of the workforce, okay? That's a very, very tough job, no matter how beautiful is the ROI. Let alone convincing the purchasing group to make it happen. So our idea was to tap into an existing budget, to use the same way of how they are doing things now, and to minimize the process of converting from installation, training, and so on into, let's just change your behavior in best practices. That's all. So we took the idea of surveying blindly with acoustic equipment the system, looking for leaks. And what we preached is that the same people, exactly the same people, the same type of capability would, instead of going blindly looking for the leaks, they would use our map to focus their efforts in the higher in the areas of higher likelihood of finding a leak, which would be the easiest we could develop in terms of transition. Having said that, we immediately started to get from the water utilities the type of procurement documents like any other things that they are doing. They didn't think that we are different than buying a pipe or a meter or a sensor. So here we are getting 60, 70, 90 pages of documents with all kinds of requirements. And all we are doing is giving you data. Why do I need $5 million of insurance if I don't even come to visit you? I'm taking the image from space. So we could decide that we fight it, okay? Which means that it will go into legal back and forth. We could decide that we can comply. Okay, you want to do business with me as you do with pipes or meters or any, fine. And that was our penetration strategy. Mm-hmm. Over time, the adoption became more important than just generating business. And we had to move into a model of service. And as you said earlier, the market was more receptive to move from I'm buying something, in our case, it will be metal, meters, or data, into I'm getting a service over time. And for that, we developed our EO Discover platform, which I hope that you would find an opportunity to speak with our product management in the future, our product manager, Gary, in the future, to get a better sense of what it is. And immediately, the next layer of value came together with it, because just dumping the data on the customer without understanding what does it do, how does it answer your KPI, our dashboard today is as valuable as the data. And I'll leave it for another opportunity to explain why and how it works.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's talking about the initial market penetration, doing it the way that your customer fits it into their program, their model, makes a lot of sense. And then it's interesting that it's almost, maybe in some ways, almost an easier sale relative to this service model, which you have to, I guess over the last, 10 years, software as a service has become ubiquitous in the marketplace in all kinds of places. And so that's making it easier for organizations to do.
You are correct, but I am not selling to the IT department. I'm selling into the operational group. And
that's a different customer.
Correct.
Yeah. And you have to train them. I hear you. Well, there's always a lot of pieces of the puzzle. And if it was easy, they wouldn't need us, right?
Correct.
So what's your overall goal for the company?
From an ESG perspective, is to position us as humanity eyes in the SAR spectrum, SAR, synthetic aperture radar. Paul, we managed to go through the whole podcast without talking about the technology. Isn't it great?
There's a method to my madness.
Yeah. Okay. So I will just say that our technology is based on radar.
Okay. There you go.
And for the sake of those that needs a bit of education in that area, most of the Earth observation data is coming from visual bandwidth. And we are not using the visual. We're using radar, which is a different bandwidth. Again, I'm not going into the physics here, but because radar is so complicated, we are talking here about a completely different set of data that is complicated to work with. And we see ourselves as the company that needs to bring these insights to humanity in order to solve infrastructure issues on Earth. It's not trivial because radar is chaotic. It's because it's subject to a lot of interferences and noise to ratio issues. And we managed to do a good job on identifying phenomena that are important for prevention, maintenance, and doing good for the majority of the people. By the way, if we're talking about water people, I mean, we kind of spoke about the negative side about it. I do want to say something about the water people, which with everything that I've said earlier, water people are good people. It's absolutely amazing how much care exists in the mind of the water people compared to many other industries that I'm tapping into. It's a fascinating market in terms of understanding the importance of what they are doing. In fact, what is fascinating about the water sector compared to all other sectors is it's clear to each and every professional in the water sector that he touches each and every person in his territory. It goes to everybody. It doesn't matter where they live, what income they have, if it's a business, if it's a house. You know, that's a responsibility that you know as a water person that it's your responsibility to take care of something which is very, very basic. And nobody can take it from the water sector.
No, it's interesting. I find that fascinating as well, the level of concern and responsibility that people in the water business have for their product, I'll call it that, is universal. It's just, you know, everybody cares, and I gotta thank them for that. Every time I turn on the tap, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm so glad you care.
Yeah, well, Paul, you are a water guy probably most of your career, correct?
30 years, you know.
Okay, so I'm here. You can call it a visitor compared to the majority, the majority of the industry, and it was shocking to understand what does it take to make what usual person in the field think that it's for granted. Turning on the faucet, getting high quality 24/7, high pressure water, no brainer, correct? It's like taken for granted.
Yeah.
The amount of effort that it takes to make it happen is staggering. And the fact that the water sector doesn't market it is also an issue that I find interesting. The water sector is in a defense mode, never in a putting out there to the public what is the real value of what they are doing. People remember the water utility only when there is a problem.
Yeah. No, it's really true. It's a fascinating business. When I first got into it in the early 90s, I guess, you know, of all the career moves I made, you know, obviously I'm still in it, so it was the best one. I just find it endlessly interesting. Yeah, maybe this will be my final career move. We'll see. There might be something that might come up that might be more interesting. I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, share those ideas with me. I'll be happy to listen. I do want also to bring to the awareness of everybody the importance of the organizations that foster the adoption of technology from the beginning. Imagine H2O, which we were the part of the cohort of 2017, and we got the first place. The organization like ISLE and many others that are looking on those challenges, aware of those challenges, and trying to support the market on exposing the market to new technologies, helping both the water sector or the water market and the technology companies to bridge all those gaps that we have described earlier.
Yep. Well, that's good. Yeah, those are great organizations. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. I apologize for not talking about the technology, but there'll be other parts of this anniversary episode that we will talk about the technology with them. So thank you very much and continued success.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul, for having me on your podcast. It's always fun talking with you.
Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, make sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and rate us 5 stars. Please visit thewaterentrepreneur.org for additional content or to apply to become a future guest. For information on becoming a sponsor, please contact us at thewaterentrepreneur@gmail.com. We hope you tune in again next week.